Welcome to Work Your Magic with me, your host, Ada. This is a podcast at the intersection of business and spirituality for the soul-led entrepreneur who wants to succeed in alignment and authentically shine. Each week, we will dive deep into all things business while discussing the unconventional path of following your intuition and letting your soul lead the way as you build your legacy. It's my birthday. Happy birthday to me. Welcome to the Work Your Magic podcast. This is my birthday episode. I am turning 32 years old on April 5th, but I really wanted to make a special dedicated episode to go into more detail about the lessons that I feel like I have really embodied as I come into my 32nd year of life. It's one thing to know these lessons and to be familiar, or even, you hear other people say this, but it's a whole different thing when you can actually embody those lessons because of personal experiences, and you can talk about them from that point of reference, from a point of personal embodiment. So I'm really excited to share with you guys 6 things that I've learned this last year of my life. I could have shared so many more things, but I feel like these are sort of like the top things that I learned. For those of you that are into astrology like me and you want to know a little bit more about my big 3. So I am an Aries sun, I'm a Leo moon, and I am a newfound Libra rising. And I say newfound because I ordered my birth certificate, y'all, this past year, and I was shooketh to find out that I was not born at 12:30 a.m., how my mother shared with me. I was actually born at 6:22 p.m. I don't know how she got the times wrong. I do remember her saying that she didn't know whether it was midnight or, the evening. All she knows is that there was a nurse that told her that she was not going to leave her shift until my mom gave birth to me. So she just was never sure of like what time it was. And so I guess I could see how if I was in labor, I would be confused as to, is it midnight or is it just evening? I don't know. But anyways, this whole time I really thought that I was a triple fire sign because according to the original birth time that my mom gave me, I would have been a Sagittarius rising, which would have made me a triple fire sign. And I'm not gonna lie, I love Sagittarius. I'm a fellow fire sign. So I was so excited to be able to say that I was a triple fire sign, but also dang, that's a lot. Triple fire. I will say that after I got over the initial shock of being a Libra rising, I was relieved. I'm not as crazy as a triple fire sign. And that's no shade to people that are triple fire signs. I'm a double fire sign. I'm not that far from you guys. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I've learned this past year about myself, because ultimately I really feel like, I've really gotten to know myself on a whole new level. And I will say that, I've only been in my 30s for a year. I'm going to turn 32. But I really have been enjoying my 30s so much, and for many reasons. But I think the most important and impactful one for me has been the fact that I feel like I have finally achieved some sort of financial ability in my life that has really allowed me to not be on survival mode anymore. And I didn't realize how much something like that would affect my life. I've always known it, but when you actually experience it, it really is I could cry just thinking about it. And ultimately what that has taught me is that I really feel the most free when I have a certain guarantee of income. And as an entrepreneur, my income has fluctuated so much over the years. And it really took me buckling down and really educating myself more on key business fundamentals and applying that into my business, investing in myself enough so that I can learn those key business fundamentals or bring in the right people in order to be able to scale my business to a point that I do have a sense of guaranteed income and that I have more predictability in regards to how much money I'm making every month. And I think as an entrepreneur, that for me, that's been the hardest part about my journey, is not being able to predict my income month to month, which makes it really hard for you to be able to like live your life. You know, there's always that underlying feeling of like, am I going to be able to pay my rent? Am I going to make enough to cover my expenses? And if I'm making enough, like how long am I going to have to like budget this big check that I'm getting, because I'm not necessarily too sure of when the next big check is going to come. And so in having that guaranteed income every month and experiencing that as of late in my life, it really has allowed me to feel so free. Like this is probably the most free that I've ever felt in my life. And another thing I've realized too is that as much as I'm not big on routine, like I enjoy change. Like I could never do like the same thing every single day. That would drive me crazy. And it's actually really boring to me. But I've realized that when I have a certain structure to my day, that I do, it enables creative flow for me, which is crazy because I just would have never thought that as someone who doesn't really like routine or structure for the most part. And so that combination of having a certain structure to my day really came about from having a certain guarantee of income, right? And so what I've noticed is that for me, real freedom comes from having the stability to experiment, to try new things, and to let my creative mind run wild. But I can't do that if I don't have a sense of guaranteed income that I know that I can depend on, which allows me to have certain structure to my day. So do you see how everything is connected? And so I've just been in deep, deep gratitude for the work that I have put in personally and professionally. Personally, when it comes to my healing, which has reflected in my business professionally and really has allowed me to have more structure in my life and in my business, especially when it comes to my finances. And, you know, I'm someone who really prides herself on having freedom in her life, because ultimately, as someone who didn't grow up with many choices, is like I was played the cards that I was dealt. I realized that having the ability to have choices first and foremost, number one, and then having the ability to always be able to choose the best choice for me in that moment and the best choice that is aligned to the experience that I want to live in that moment. For example, like I'm really big on ease, right? And being able to make a choice that is aligned with ease in my life. That's what freedom and success looks like and feels like for me. And I'm just really grateful. Like I could really cry just thinking about it, because my life wasn't always like this. And I feel like for so much of my life, I've been swimming upstream. And like this past year, I feel like I'm finally flowing with life. And I just have so much gratitude in my heart for it. Wow. Tears on episode 2, y'all. Okay, moving right along. The next thing that I've learned, you know, this past year about myself is that I really want to live a life that is centered around the experience of joy for life and pleasure. And I've always known this about myself, because as a little girl, like I've just always gravitated towards beautiful things, beautiful experiences, beautiful moments. And my family made me feel that because of that, I was someone who was very vain and materialistic. And society also made me feel like I was someone who was very vain and materialistic, because I really have like such an appreciation and admiration for beauty in all forms and in all ways. And so what I've realized is that joy, romance, and the appreciation of beauty are things that are really central to my existence, especially my daily existence. I'm really driven to live and create a world for myself that is pleasurable, that is aesthetically pleasing, and none of that makes me a vain person, and none of that makes me a materialistic person. And I feel so free in being able to say that, because for a long time, I feel like I was punishing myself for feeling that way. And ultimately, that is just a part of who I am. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love connecting in creative and innovative ways with people. And I love to do that in community specifically. I love building projects and accessing pleasure through exchanging ideas and intellect. I'm an intellectual person. I am a sapiosexual. I love intellectual conversations and experiences, and I love collaborating with others. And so I just kind of like finally accepting that about myself, because it's not that I realized it, it's that I've always known it, but I didn't accept it because of the opinions of others and the way that they were projecting what that looked like for them. You know, growing up, my siblings would always make fun of me and call me like plastic, or call me Barbie, or say that I thought that I was better than them. And that was never the case, right? When people think that you think you're better than them, a lot of the times is that they actually think that you're better than them. And they're projecting their shit on you. So I've done my own inner work and healing to really be able to not internalize that, and to reverse the wounds that I had around that, because I did internalize it in the past. But I guess the biggest thing that I always want to remind myself with this like newfound acceptance of my life being centered around the experience of joy and pleasure is that I am complete in myself, whether or not I am in love or in collaboration. And so what that means is, when you break that down, is that typically joy and pleasure are associated with love. And also for me personally, joy and pleasure are associated with collaboration. So I just always want to remind myself that I am complete in myself, whether or not I am experiencing joy and pleasure through love or through collaboration, which are things that are really important to me. That has been like a huge aha moment for me. And more than anything, I'm really passionate about dismantling the barriers that keep people from experiencing joy and pleasure, which is why I've had the trajectory that I've had with everything that I've done. Because at the root of everything that I've created, especially with my businesses and with the work that I do online, it really is being able to show Black and brown women what joy looks like for me, what pleasure looks like for me, and basking in that unapologetically as I work through my own shit about basking in that stuff unapologetically. And with that being said, that's the perfect segue into the third thing that I have learned about myself this year, which is that I have been shrinking myself to accommodate other people's discomfort my entire life. And I had this realization a few months ago when I really started to work on my fear of being fully seen. I didn't even know that that was a fear that I had. But when I got to the root of that fear, what I realized was that the fear wasn't in really being fully seen. The fear was in how would other people feel like when I fully allowed myself to experience everything that I am, when I really allowed myself to fully shine without accommodating other people's thoughts, opinions, and discomfort around me standing in my power and light. And this was really connected to my inner child. You know, as a child, I used to be really outspoken. I used to be just like very vivacious. And just think about a child in your life right now who's just really bright and really opinionated and really charismatic and just very joyful. That was me as a child. And I realized that light, the way that I used to shine, really got diminished when I experienced certain things as a child and as a teen that was really heavy and difficult. And I'm not going to go into detail on those things in this podcast episode, but, you know, when you go through real heavy adult shit as a child, when you have to deal with the consequences of adults' actions that have nothing to do with you, but everything to do with you because you are immediately impacted by the decisions that they make, it makes you grow up really fucking fast. And so I never really got to experience like a full childhood or really enjoy my teenage years because I was really forced to tap into my strength and my power and become an adult at a much earlier age than anyone should hope or anticipate. And so those things really caused me to dim my light. And another thing that caused me to dim my light is I think subconsciously I started to notice how I used to make other people feel when I would take up space and when I would shine my light. I would feel their discomfort. And, you know, I'm someone who, like, I cannot not take up space even if I wanted to, right? I am 5'10". I am 220 pounds. I have a head full of curly hair. The minute that I walk into a room, I'm physically taking up space, and energetically my aura takes up space. So if you are someone who is not comfortable in who you are, me being comfortable in who I am and shining bright is going to cause you discomfort. So what I would do is that I would sense their discomfort and I would tone it down. I would dim my light in order to accommodate their discomfort of themselves around me. Not me, because it wasn't that I was making them uncomfortable. It was the way that I took up space and that I shined really made them realize that they probably weren't. And so their way of sitting with that was just to feel discomfort, and in turn, I would shrink. And so I'm not doing that shit anymore. I am not responsible for the way that people deal with the way that I take up space and shine. I am not responsible for people's feelings. I am not responsible for the way that they are not taking up space and shining. My only role and responsibility and commitment is to myself. And I cannot and I will no longer accommodate people's discomfort towards my light and my shine. I'm just sick of it. Now, the interesting thing about this is that I know this is a lesson that I'm always going to be working on, because I know that the more that I work on this and the more that I heal on this, the more subtle that this shows up in my life. And the perfect example actually is a recent experience that I had. Are you a soul-led entrepreneur thriving with ease, or simply questioning if entrepreneurship was the right choice for you as you struggle doing all the things just to survive day to day in your life and business? Do you want a new way to operate your business and increase yearly profits that actually works? If you're truly ready for real business mastery with ease and an increase in profit, Business Through the Chakras was designed specially to help you get there. Through my signature group coaching program, Business Through the Chakras, I've had the pleasure of helping soul-led entrepreneurs heal their energy blocks, shine authentically as the badass CEOs they've always wanted to become, and master their business strategies. All of this resulted in them tripling their income. You see, my approach is different from other business courses because I intentionally and consciously use the chakras to understand energy blocks and the ways your business is mirroring to you the things you need to heal to become the successful soulpreneur you've always wanted to be. If you're interested in signing up for the next cohort, make sure that you get on the Business to the Chakras waitlist by visiting allthingsada.com. Once again, that is allthingsada.com, and you can find more information about this program in the show notes. Which reiterates lesson number 4, which is me getting comfortable with making other people feel uncomfortable. Like that discomfort that I initially feel, I just need to get used to it. I need to sit with it, and I need to stop trying to rush through it or avoid it, because it's never gonna go away. All right, so boom, here's what happened. A few days ago, I felt like I needed to just spend some time with myself, so I ended up taking myself out on a solo date. If you guys want me to make an episode on how I plan solo dates and how I have the courage to spend time with myself in public, let me know. I can definitely make an episode about that. But, you know, it was a Saturday. I decided to spend the day with myself, and I did multiple things, but the last thing that I ended up doing randomly was like, oh, like I haven't been to the movies in a long time. Let me go to the movies. So I went to the movie theater, and the movie theater that I went to is the one where you like select your seats in advance, and, you know, it has the recliners and all of that. And so because I had bought my ticket so late, like an hour before the movie started, obviously the seats were limited, and the seat that I ended up purchasing was a seat that was like in the middle. So clearly the other seats around it were already purchased, and that was the one seat that was available. So I'm like, okay, it's just me. That's fine. Like, you know, I'll just buy that seat. I wanted to be seated like a little bit more elevated and in the middle of the theater. So like, I didn't mind that I was going to have to sit next to other people that I probably didn't know. Right. Cause I just felt that that was the best seat. So when I got to the movie theater, I made my way to row F, and my seat was seat 10. When I get to the row and I'm looking at the numbers, someone is sitting in my seat. Now, if I was really like tapped in, if I was really like operating out of this new mindset, I would have asked them to get up from my seat, right? But in that moment, that discomfort of saying something, and then there was already people there. The movie also was going to start like shortly. So like, I didn't want to just have to deal with like the commotion of like, hey, you're in my seat. And then like the movie starting. And then, you know, so what did I do? I said nothing. And I looked down the row, and I saw that there was 3 seats available towards the end of the row. So I'm like, perfect. I'll just sit over there. The movie's starting, so it looks like those seats are not taken anyway. And, you know, I won't have to sit anybody because I won't have to sit next to anyone because I'm just going to sit in, the middle of the 3 seats that were available. So I won't have anyone to the left of me or to the right. So I go sit in this chair. I get comfortable. I, you know, bring the recliner back, and the movie is like starting very soon. And all of a sudden I see this couple walking towards me, and they're checking their phone, and they're checking me, and they're checking their phone. And I'm like, oh shit, like clearly these are their seats. But what am I going to do? I'm like, I'm going to keep it G. I'm going to make no eye contact with them. I'm literally going to be dismissive. Like, I'm not about to get up. So I'm just not going to make any eye contact. So eventually they ended up sitting in the 2 seats that were available in front of my row. So they sat there, and then another couple comes into the movie theater. And so they're looking at their phone. They're looking at the seats. They're looking at the couple who apparently is in their seats. And so then the other couple turns back to look at me again. I'm not looking at them. I'm not looking them in the eye because I'm not about to get up. So then what do? They sit in the seats that are not theirs, but were the 2 seats that were available in front of that couple. So now I created this chain of events of I was inconvenienced, so now I inconvenience others, right? So now the movie actually starts, and maybe like a minute or 2 into the movie, this group of 4 people walk in. When they walk in, they noticed that, that last couple that was sitting in the wrong seat was actually sitting in their seat, and it was 4 of them. So guess what? Do you think he was going to inconvenience himself and his family because somebody was sitting in their seats? Absolutely not. What did he do? He was like, yo, you're sitting in my seats. And I couldn't really hear what was happening because I was already 2 rows back. And obviously the movie had started and it was really loud. But I guess he must have told them like, oh, well, somebody's sitting in my seat. So basically, to make a long story short, the guy just told him like, okay, well, like, that's not my problem. Like, you need to figure it out because these are my seats and I pay for these tickets and we're here and we're going to watch a movie. So that couple got up and spoke to the couple behind them. Then that couple got up and came to talk to me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, somebody was sitting in my seat. So I just came and sat here. And she was like, okay, like, no problem. But can you just move to the seat next over to you? So that we could just sit here and basically this whole mess could be fixed. So I sit in the seat that was available, which was next to a random person that I didn't know. So now I'm sitting between a random person to my left and then this couple to my right. And in that moment, what came to me was, okay, so you didn't want to cause discomfort to the person that was not sitting where they were supposed to sit. They were sitting in your chair. So you basically accommodated them by not saying anything, by not telling them to get up from your seat, by not causing the commotion. Even in that moment, like, for whatever reason, they chose to sat in the chair that they weren't supposed to, right? So I was accommodating them and their discomfort because they chose to sit in my chair to be more comfortable to them. But in them choosing that for them, it was an inconvenience for me. So instead of, dealing with the discomfort of saying something to them, I went and just sat somewhere else. That triggered a whole chain reaction of events of other people inconvenienced until someone spoke up and said something. And then ultimately that whole fiasco happened. And guess who was inconvenienced in the end? Me. Because I still ended up having to sit next to people that I didn't know and in a seat that was not the seat that I paid for. So had I just said something from the jump, that would have never happened. So it was just a huge reminder of like, do you see how in that moment you shrunk? You shrunk because you didn't want to say anything. You shrunk because you didn't want to confront this person. You shrunk because you didn't want to deal with your own discomfort of having to say something. You shrunk because of you were thinking about what the other people in the movie theater were going to think. And it's like, fuck all of that. In the end, I was inconvenienced. That person who happily sat in my seat, they were not giving a fuck. And it's like, why did I have to deal with that now? Why was that now my problem? And so I'm sharing this with you all as a reminder for you and for me to notice, when you are making yourself an inconvenience or making yourself uncomfortable, to accommodate other people's discomfort or to accommodate other people, period. Who is in your seat and why are you accommodating them? I had a journal about that one, y'all, because I'm like, yo. But again, it goes back to the subtle ways that this shows up in your life. And if you're paying attention to notice the way that it's showing up to remind you of the things that you said that you were no longer going to do. The 5th thing that I've learned this past year is that I truly have never acknowledged my feelings fully. So being in survival mode most of my life made me deal with my anger, my fear, my feelings of betrayal, my feelings of sadness in a way that I was fully not acknowledging them because from an early age, I realized that it's like, okay, I'm in this system. I realized the different ways that like life was set up for me not to basically win, right? To fail, especially coming from where I come from. And I refuse to like let those systems like win. So what did I do? I really heavily leaned on my strength and my intellect to push me through these systems. Like I figured the systems out and I was just like, I'm going to play the cards that I'm dealt with, but eventually like I'm going to be in control of my own destiny because I am. And so being in survival mode and having to be the strong one made me not fully acknowledge the range of my emotions because I always wanted to stay in like happy-go-lucky, positive Patty. And I'm naturally a very optimistic person. And that frequency feels better to me than fully acknowledging my anger, fully acknowledging my fears, fully acknowledging my sadness. So every time that I would feel it, I would do whatever I needed to do to quickly jump back into optimism and being positive and happy-go-lucky and all those things. And that is not okay, because what happens is when you don't fully acknowledge those emotions, the body keeps the score, and that energy, those feelings get stored in your body. And it's not until you release them that they're just going to be hanging out there chilling. So I realized this past year that I really have not ever acknowledged my emotions fully, the full range of my emotions, not just the good ones, but the bad ones too. And it's because I saw growing up what acknowledging those emotions could do, right? So for example, my older sister had a lot of anger, and the way that she expressed her anger got her in certain situations that I knew that I did not want to be part of or involved in. And so for me, what was modeled to me growing up subconsciously is that when you express these emotions, there's consequences to expressing them. So I never gave myself full permission to experience those emotions because of the consequences that I felt that would be attached to them. And again, I'm in survival mode. The only way to get out of survival mode is to peep the system, play by the rules until you get to a point where you don't have to play by the rules anymore. So if I allowed myself the chance to fully experience a range of emotions, it was going to put me in a position where I would have to deal with consequences, and I wasn't going to be able to live the life that I always dreamed of and imagined. And it's just crazy to know that, like, I've been carrying that for the last 31 years of my life. And one of the things that I'm going to focus heavily on in going into 32 is really giving myself the permission to be angry. Like, there's nothing wrong with being angry. There's nothing wrong with experiencing quote unquote negative emotions. They're there for a reason. They're there to remind me, or to basically alert me that there's something going on within you. What's going on? And because I never allowed myself to fully experience it, I would just rush through it. Again, those emotions were stored inside of my body. And, it has led me to overeating. It has led me to now gaining weight. And it's just so crazy to be able to tie all of this back to that. Like, at the root of me overeating and gaining weight the last 3 years, that's what it is. It's because I have not given myself permission to fully experience the range of my emotions. And so what I'm learning now is really to honor those emotions fully, feel into them, see, well, why am I feeling this way? What's coming up for me? And then alchemize it and channel that emotion into something else and really fully release it. But in order to fully release it, I need to experience it. And I cannot continue to bypass negative emotions. It is okay. They are okay. And so the last thing I want to share, and the last lesson that I learned that ties back to acknowledging my feelings fully, is really fully leaning into reparenting myself and mothering myself. That is something that I have been focused on this past year, but something that has really been highlighted for me the last few months. So self-awareness and self-care is my top priority, right? It's the only way that I can be in devotion to myself is by really prioritizing myself and my needs. I need to center my own needs. And for a long time, and for most of my life, I've never really done that. And I had a really powerful therapy session last week where I realized that the way that I show my worth to people, and this is tied back to my childhood, the way that I learned to show my worth to people is by helping, and is by doing, and it's by being the helper, right? I'm always that friend that my friends call on where, like, something's happening. Oh, I need your help. Or, like, even just, can you hold space for me to process X, Y, and Z? So I've just always been that person for everyone. But I started to think of, like, okay, well, my friends and my close loved ones have designated me into that role in their life, but how have I also fed into that, right? How have I also felt like I needed to help in order to feel worthy of their friendship, of their love, of their affection? So that was really fucking heavy in the latest therapy session that I had. But what I realized too is that because I haven't been fully in touch with my emotions and honoring myself, I have projected my needs onto other people. And so when I'm going through periods when I'm sad, when I need to be comforted, instead of really learning to regulate my own emotions and being able to center my needs and mother myself and work through my own things on my own, I haven't really learned how to self-regulate. I have very subconsciously been projecting that onto other people and onto very specific people that I love, right? Like certain men in my life throughout the years, I have projected like that onto them. And it's not their role or responsibility to take care of me, especially if I'm not taking care of myself. It's one thing if the care comes from like, it's an addition to what I'm already doing for me. But for me to sit here and project that need to be taken care of on somebody that's really not their job, that's not okay. So like coming to the conclusion of that and ultimately really learning to not outsource my own needs to be cared for, my self-motivation or my confidence to other people. Like those three things, like my need to be cared for, my self-motivation, and my confidence are not other people's responsibilities. Those are my responsibility. Anything that they add on to my life is just extra. But at the core, those are basic things that I need to be able to give myself. The Leo moon in me, right? That energy just shines bright like the sun. And I'm such a light source for so many people, but in that, I need to remember that I am my own power source, even as I share my light with others. And I cannot outsource that to other people. I need to know when I need to be cared for, right? And that comes from really honoring like the mother within you and the ability that we all have to mother ourselves. So just like a mother will innately know the needs of her child, we need to innately know, well, what do I need in this very moment? Like, why do I feel sad? Why do I feel angry? Why do I feel, anxious? And being able to acknowledge those feelings, feel them fully, but then be like, okay, well, how can I mother myself through this, right? And whether you need help, right? It's just like, okay, let me schedule a therapy session because I need to talk about this with someone. This past week, I felt like a little bit of sadness and I couldn't really pinpoint where it was coming from. And then I was able to connect it to like this sense of like, oh, I feel like I need to be hugged. Like, I feel like I need physical touch right now in my life. And, I don't have a partner, so it's not like I could just be like, hey, babe, can you give me a hug or anything? And I don't really have a lot of close friends and family that live here in Chicago. So it's not like I can just go over to a friend's house and go get a hug or something. So what did I do? I scheduled a massage for myself, right? And maybe that sounds crazy to you, like, oh, you're paying for somebody to touch you, but it's like in that moment, first of all, I love massages, okay? And second of all, I understood that I really needed like physical touch. So I booked my massage and I can't even begin to tell you how incredible I felt afterwards. And being able to acknowledge that, in that moment, I felt sad and sitting with it and like journaling and working through it. And then being able to be like, okay, well, what do I need right now? Oh, I need like physical touch, and booking that massage for myself was just like, for me, a great way of like me showing myself that like, I got this. And like, I don't need anybody to be able to like power me, if that makes any sense. Like, I just need to be able to get quiet enough to acknowledge whatever it is that I'm feeling, sitting with it, and then like, okay, well, what do I need? And being able to vocalize that and also take action in that. And so to summarize year 31 for me, I've really learned that it's okay for me to be selfish. It's okay for me to center my own needs, and not only to center them, but to really be mindful about the way that I pour and give to myself. Because when I pour into myself first and I serve from a place of overflow, everyone wins. But when I pour and I give to others from a place of deficit because I have not poured into myself first, I actually end up being bitter because I end up giving and I get left with nothing. And so I just don't want to feel that way anymore. I don't want to continue to give and feel like I'm left with nothing. And the only way to stop that from happening is to really always be pouring into myself first, but to also take inventory of like the giving and the receiving in my relationships. And as much as I give to myself, if I notice that someone is just constantly taking from me and it's not reciprocal, like being okay with walking away and with letting them know too, like, this is not going to work for me. Like, at this point in my life, I just have no desire to be in relation with people who are not going to reciprocate my energy, because my energy is so precious. My vibes are just so beautiful. I am truly a beautiful person inside and out. And if you cannot appreciate that or reciprocate my energy, I just have no desire to like be in relationship with you. And that is okay. So I know this episode was a tad long, but I hope you all enjoyed these reflections that I've been sitting with as I get ready to turn 32. Thank you in advance for all of the birthday love and the birthday wishes. I'm so honored to be on this journey with you. And I hope that my birthday reflections have helped you sort of reflect on any lessons or anything that you're currently working through and giving you some clarity. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Work Your Magic. Make sure to visit allthingsala.com, where you can subscribe to the show, see all the dope ways I'm working my magic, and never miss an episode. While you're at it, if anything in this episode resonated with you, or if you find value in this show, I would greatly appreciate some love in the form of a rating on Apple Podcasts, a link text to your sister, prima, vecina, or business bestie, or a screenshot on social media. This energy exchange would mean so much to me, as it helps this passion project continue to grow and reach more soul-led entrepreneurs like you. Also, if you enjoyed this show, you would greatly benefit from my group coaching program, Business Through the Chakras, where I help soul-led entrepreneurs boss up and authentically shine through business strategy and chakra healing. Check out the link in the description or go visit allthingsala.com.